Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar. You are tuning in for day 5 of the 5-day series. We made it. Day 5 of NAHASDA Procurement and Contract Administration with your instructor, Cheryl A. Cosley. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're so happy you could join us for this 5th and final webinar in this series. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. And then just a friendly reminder, we have our copyright infringement law printed here. So the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. If you need to access the recording from today or any of the previous days of the series, the different slides, if you want to share the resource with one of your colleagues, all of that can be found in the courses section here on the website, and you can access all of our previous webinars that we've hosted on here as well. If you tune into a future webinar, now that you're on the platform, that's all you'll have to do. You're already registered for everyone that we have in the future. You'll just log in during the time of the webinar and you'll see that green banner at the top of the screen, and that's how you'll join. We do ask that you join with listen-only capabilities. It just helps to cut down on audio feedback. And if you've joined and you realized your sound is coming out of the wrong device, maybe you have a speaker you prefer to use, you can bring up your list of mic and audio devices by clicking on that little telephone icon in the bottom of the screen. There's different ways you can interact during the webinar. We, of course, want to encourage your comments, your questions, any tech support issues I can try to help you get through. We encourage you to use the public chat. If you don't already have it opened, you can open it by just clicking on public chat up there in that left-hand menu. You can also find the shared notes section there. There's a lot of different links in the shared notes, but I have included the presentation slides link in the chat for you already. But if you want to participate, ask a question, make a comment, introduce yourself, whatever it may be, just click in that box where it says send message to public chat, type what you want to say, and then hit enter or click on that paper airplane icon and it'll send it on in. You guys can take a second to introduce yourselves and get the chat box going now. You can let us know your name, where you're joining from, your work or your role in Indian country that probably led you to today's webinar, and then your tribal affiliation if you have one. And then just one final note, try not to click on that left-hand red menu panel all the way to the left of your screen. It does pull you out of the webinar and takes you to whatever you clicked. You could just rejoin by clicking on the green banner again if that does happen. All right, folks, while you guys are getting the chat going, it is with great pleasure I introduce your webinar instructor for today, Cheryl Cosley. And Cheryl, I'm going to make you presenter now.
Thank you. Welcome, guys. You made it to day 5. Woohoo! This is brought to you courtesy, as she said, of the Native Learning Center and the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We fall under the Office of Native American Programs. So welcome and good afternoon. We usually start our stuff with a smudging or a prayer. Did that already. And this webinar is being recorded. So if you do need me in the future, if you have any questions, anything like that, my information is at the beginning and the end. Feel free to reach out and ask for help if you need it. My name is Cheryl Cosley. My Anishinaabe name is Redbird Woman. I'm Loon Clan, and I come from Place of the Pike in my language, which is Keno-Shinkoning. Bay Mills Reservation is located in the top of Michigan in the Upper Peninsula, and our waters actually border Canada. We're a Ojibwe or Chippewa people, and I served as my tribe's Director of Housing for over 28 years. During that time frame, I also served with the Great Lakes Indian Housing Association, the 31 tribes surrounding the Great Lakes, as their chairperson for 7 years. Also served with the National American Indian Housing Council for a total of 16 years. I started out as the secretary, went up to vice chair rather quickly, but I maintained the duty of doing the roll calls for all of the tribes right until I became chair, and then I served as the a 2-term, so 4-year chairperson or chairwoman. I then started Cheryl A. Cosley and Associates in March of 2019. I provide training and technical assistance throughout the lower 48 and Alaska. I generally travel 2 to 3 weeks a month, unless I'm doing home virtually, and then, pretty busy. But a lot of people need help, and I enjoy, I'm blessed to be able to do that. So with no further ado, our course structure: presentations, participant materials, examples, references. The objectives is to hopefully, and I'm hoping that this took place, that you have a better understanding of your TDA management operations as relationships, with procurement. You might not be the one responsible for coming up with the useful life policy or making sure that they adhere to insurance requirements, but you're the one that's probably going to spot it because you know how much money's going out because you're helping with the procurement of different activities. Hopefully, improved capabilities and proficiencies of job skills and in performance and procurement functions, and utilizing and understanding 2 CFR Part 200 a little bit better than you did when you started the week. My least favorite document, but that's the one we got to use when it comes to procurement and finance. So our administrative requirements, conducting procurement efficiently and effectively to comply with those requirements, and various procurement documents that you realize that you're going to utilize, and hopefully you'll use some of the samples that we give you. Please jot down your questions for the end if you have any. I will try to answer them, and if not, I'll get your email and try to email you back. My screen is a full screen, so I can't see the chat during the class, and I apologize for that. So we have contract administration today. Environmental assessments and reviews. We're supposed to make sure that those environmentals are done before we spend any money. And that is at the beginning of the year. When our money comes down, the first thing we do is we have to produce those environmentals. You should be able to recognize the difference between a subrecipient versus a contractor, and identify, which is which, because depending on what they are, you treat them differently. We're going to look at the procurement checklist for our files and some of the procurement procedures, contract file arrangement, and then finish up with utilizing those federal supply sources and procurement. Because the tribe has a right, they are, also eligible to utilize GSA, but TDHEs, housing authorities, we're given that right under NAHASDA also. Okay, so there's our reference materials. Please make sure that you grab 1, 2, and 3, or at least be versed with Code Talk and utilize that to access those. The procurement glossary, it might be a good idea, just to drop this stuff into a thumb drive so you don't have to find it later on. But that's up to you. The checklist would probably be helpful, as well as, your contract file arrangement and example ethics policy if your board and your council, if you don't have anything in place like that, or if you weren't asked to sign one, if you plan on getting any manufactured or modular homes, these solicitations will prove helpful, unless you've already got that mechanism in place. And check your total development cost. If nothing else, go make sure that you met the insurance requirements, or you guys are, or you've got total development cost, in place, that somebody's tracking that, as well as the other area where there's a little bit of slippage is that useful life. Okay. Davis-Bacon, if you guys are spending more than $2,000 and it's not the tribe doing it, or, your TDHE, you have to utilize, Davis-Bacon and publish those wage rates and pay those fees, basically, or those set wages, So there's some good information here for you that I hope you utilize. So contract administration, your award and your purchase will lead to a contract. That contract is always supposed to be in writing. That contract form can be made part of your solicitation if you would like. And the level and the detail depends on the circumstances and the type of the particular contract and the amount. So when you go to award a contract, remember, responsive, responsible. Okay, first thing you're going to determine. Then you're going to compare it with your price analysis. You're going to look and comply with any preference requirements that you have. You're going to carefully scrutinize and document everything provided to make sure that they conform to everything. You need to apply all your standards evenly. That's one thing HUD will look at and try to gauge when they do their monitoring. And this is in all aspects of housing authority or TDHE, whatever you refer to yourself, housing department life. Okay, they want to make sure that you treat everybody the same and you do everything the same. They're very picky about that. You cannot negotiate, and you can reject any and all bids for good reason. Okay, so you can use conventional contract forms and invoices. Use recipient approved a contract form. Get legal advice before you sign that. Your procurement officer transfers the administration to a contract manager once that's done, depending on your size. Sometimes you're responsible for everything. When we had force account, at certain times we'd have maybe 30, 40 employees. Other times we would go back down to maybe 10, 15, 20 employees, depending on what we were doing, and how many houses we had under administration, basically, kind of determined that staff size. We did have a procurement officer, though, and people that were knowledgeable about doing things like this. So your purpose and your importance of that contract, it is to clearly define the expectations for all the parties of the contract. It incorporates the terms that protects your rights to get goods or services delivered promptly and properly. It will help you with dispute avoidance and dispute resolution provisions. Now, your contract, depending on your A&E and the way that you have it drafted, you can put a per unit penalty in there if they say they're going to deliver something by a certain date, per unit, per day, as long as the fault is not of your own. There's things like that you can actually draft into those contracts. Long as you make sure that they're written legally, have your A&E supply that normally, and have your legal staff or theirs look at it. So you ensure all your solicitation and your pre-contract terms have been complied with. Your contract can be one page or it can be dozens. It is normally signed or executed by your contracting officer. You never know. Some tribal councils will do that. If that's going to depend upon, if you're a tribal department and if you're under a tribal manager or if you're a housing authority, they could be various different situations there. You use your recipient approved contract form, an AIA form, an AGC form, HUD form, and always get that legal advice before you execute it and sign it. So a competitive proposal contract, professional service contracts are often based on an hourly rate. So under 200-318J, excuse me, because I feel like I got a cough. Time and materials contracts, okay? HUD does not like these, I'm telling you up front. They really discourage the use. Those contracts provide no positive profit incentive for your contractors, and you have to have heavy oversight. So you got to be paying attention the whole time. So it provides, like I said, for no positive profit incentive to your contractor for cost control or labor efficiency. And each contract has to set a ceiling price that that contractor exceeds at their own risk. And it does require that high degree of oversight by you as a non-federal entity. So the award of that contract, as I said before, you can reject them. Any and all proposals for a sound and a documented reason, and you do have to document it, okay? Always keep that good paper trail. Negotiations of a contract are allowed under certain circumstances. You always have to have your cost and your price analysis, required. So those are the ins and outs, basically, of those particular contracts. So your contract and your project management goes into the next phase. See what I said about our rocks? This is the actual beach on the reservation that runs the length of it. And those rocks are all the way out into the water too. So if you're a rock lover, you're great. If not, we wear water shoes to get out there and hopefully find a sandy place. So after your execution of a contract, in some cases, you issue a notice to proceed. You ensure your contractor's compliance with your startup obligations. Administration is transferred from your procurement officer to your contract manager in some cases, if you're big enough. In some cases, you guys are going to do it all. Depends on how you're set up. So your follow-up, you have to make sure that they're completely compliant during their performance. You have to make sure everything's enforced, their labor wage rates, things like that. That everything they say in that contract they're going to do, that they're actually doing. So it's not, okay, it's signed, it's done, I'm over with it. Somebody's got to be checking on that stuff. Okay. And I mean, that goes all the way to, you get to the end and you think you're done. And then you remember somebody's got to do something with all the warranties too. So assign a person in charge of your warranties also. It's not always the best bet in a brand new unit to give the appliance package and hope that new tenant is going to send all that stuff in on your behalf, because they're not going to be calling them when something's wrong. They're going to be calling you. So, and gathering all those materials from all of those different pieces of equipment. All of that is important, and how you file it, how you can maintain it, and that somebody did all those warranties. Procurement involves contracting and contracting administration. And if you have somebody to do the, program staff to do the latter part of that, you need to coordinate between the two of you. Otherwise, you need to be responsible and make sure all of that happens under you. So the overlap of contract management and project management. So contract management ensures fulfillment of those contract requirements of all your contractor obligations, payment for work, services delivered, the retainage. Your project management is the process of completing the project by the contractor, meeting your recipient's objectives, assuring all the work's being done accordingly within those contracted amounts and the timelines that your contract lays out. Your contract manager and your contract officer, they work in coordination with the project manager throughout the contract to close out, if you have enough people, okay? So the post-award procedure, you would hold a post-award conference, issue the notice to proceed if applicable, monitor your contractor performance and compliance, the receipt of supplies, services, construction materials. Oftentimes they're going to ask you if there's a safe place. Can I keep my equipment here? Can I store this here? Monitoring and inspections of supplies, services, and construction. Acceptance of that product, the supplies, services, and construction. Payment of work completed and accepted. You exercise any applicable options for additional quantity or time period. Sometimes you can negotiate a contract that will allow you to bid more if you are not, or produce more of the same product. Project and contract completion and your project and contract closeout. So the environmental assessment and the review that go hand in hand with that. Who does them? Okay. Huge importance to a timely completion. Okay, you're going to need that HUD forms to request your release of funds, first of all, and you have consequences if you skip these steps or you do them wrong and they find out. You might have to pay back all of the money involved. So under the federal environmental requirements, no HUD funds can be expended or even obligated. And it doesn't matter if half of the funds are coming from the tribe or not. Okay. If those HUD funds are in conjunction with that, even, they can't be expended. They can't be obligated without the appropriate level of your environmental review. That falls under your NEPA, which is your National Environmental Policy Act. All the documentation has to be filed. Okay. You need proper environmental files that they can come in and review. You know, even if the stuff is exempt, you have to have proof that you did that at that time, and they'll come in and they'll look at all of those. Or your heroes. So 1024, if an Indian tribe assumes the environmental review responsibility, so right now under 50 and 54, 50 and 58, you have the ability to let HUD be responsible for your environmental reviews, but you still have to get them everything. They weren't in the office full time until, you know, just recently. And I don't know of any tribes that really have taken that responsibility and given it to them. The tribes normally do that themselves. Now, as I said, when a couple of days ago, when I work with the tribal councils and the board of commissioners, that's the first thing I ask them. If your tribe has an environmental office, please offer their services to your housing entity, because the environmental alone is a huge job. You know, the things that your contracting officer, your ED, has to track by itself, is lengthy. So I'll oftentimes ask them if they can do that. Same thing as the legal services. If you have a lawyer, may the housing entity utilize them. And can you do it free of charge? I have no problem asking them to, provide those services for their people and not run it out of, your grant. But so if you, as a tribe, assume the environmental review responsibility, which almost all of us do, how will HUD assist that tribe in performing it? So as set forth in 105 of NAHASDA, HUD's going to provide monitoring of your environmental reviews. They'll facilitate training for the performance of such reviews by Indian tribes. So the environmental effects of each activity carried out with NAHASDA must be evaluated in accordance with NEPA and the related authorities listed in HUD's implementing regulations at 24 CFR 50 and 58. Okay, that's 50 and 58. One says, well, the housing entity is going to be responsible. The other one says they're going to give that responsibility over to HUD, but they're going to still produce all the materials for HUD to be able to do it. So an environmental review does not have to be completed prior to HUD approval of an IHP. Okay. So, is the tribe required to assume the review responsibilities? Well, no. Under Part 50, HUD will do that if you want. It's an option. The Indian tribe can actually choose. If the tribe declines to assume the environmental review responsibilities, HUD's going to perform them in accordance with Part 50. The timing of HUD undertaking and the environmental review will be subject to the availability of HUD's resources. That's another reason the majority of the tribes do that themselves. That's our sovereign immunity. Is the other reasoning behind that. So your HUD environmental review must be completed. A HUD environmental review, whoever does it, must be completed for any NAHASDA assisted activity not excluded from review under 24 CFR 50.19. So I believe that is in your reference materials. There is a new environmental document that came out that shows you a lot of things that are exempt. They have hopefully, made it a little bit easier to go through this project, and they'll say, okay, all of these activities are exempt. And that is also, I believe, in your reference materials, okay? Before a recipient can, and if not, it's a PIH number 2024-24. So it just came out at the latter part of last year. So it's a fresh document for your use. So before a recipient may acquire, rehabilitate, convert, lease, repair, construct property, commit HUD or local funds, remember, can't use anybody else's either, in conjunction with such NAHASDA assisted activities with respect to your property, you have to make sure that that environmental review is done. There's certain things that will stop you right in your tracks, okay? If you, ever come across any type of bones of any sort. Certain animals, box turtles, endangered species of certain sorts. There's quite a few things can actually trigger that, and you have to be really careful. So, is an Indian tribe required to assume the review responsibilities? Well, if they assume that environmental review responsibilities, the certifying officer certifies that they are authorized, first of all, and consents on behalf of the Indian tribe and such officer to accept the jurisdiction of the federal courts that are involved for the purposes of enforcement of those responsibilities of the certifying officer as set forth in section 105 of the NAHASDA statute, and the tribe must follow the requirements of 24 CFR Part 58. Now, normally, this is your tribal chairperson, okay? They're the only ones that normally will stand up in court and make that fight, okay? Just so you know. Your certifying officer, the CO, is your chief executive officer for the tribe, okay? The CO may also be another tribal officer who has been formally delegated the responsibility by your governing body to act on behalf of the tribe in the environmental review process. You can read about that in the NAHASDA statute at 105C and section 104, okay? Our certifying officer is your primary environmental decision maker with the authority to approve or reject projects. He or she is authorized to execute a certification of environmental compliance and to request that release of funds from HUD when required. Requests are submitted to HUD on Form 7015.15 entitled A Request for Release of Funds and Certification. So that CO has specific legal functions, the responsibilities that assume the role of your responsible federal official under NEPA and the related federal laws and authorities. Representing the tribe, being subject to the jurisdiction of the federal courts concerning the execution of the NEPA requirements and the related federal laws and authorities. The responsibilities cannot be assumed by other staff or those temporarily acting on behalf of the CO in his or her absence. An additional role of the CO is to ensure your tribe reviews and comments on all environmental impact statements prepared for federal projects that may have an impact on your recipient program. No funds can be committed to a grant activity or project before the completion of your environmental review and approval of the request for release of funds and related certification required by sections 105B and C of NAHASDA, except as authorized by 24 CFR Part 58. Such as for the cost of environmental reviews and other planning and administrative expenses. That would, the only funding you can utilize before you get that done. So it's always smart, if you're going to do a big project, to know exactly what your plans are, get the people involved that need to be involved, to start that process as soon as you can out of the box. Okay. So where an environmental assessment and EA is appropriate under Part 50, instead of a tribe assuming the environmental review responsibilities under paragraph B of this section, or HUD preparing the EA itself under paragraph A, the Indian tribe or TDHE can prepare an EA for HUD review. In addition to complying with the requirements at 40 CFR 1506.5, HUD shall make its own evaluation of the environmental issues and take responsibility for the scope and content of the EA in accordance with 40 CFR 1506.5b. So a tribe or recipient may request the secretary waive the requirements under section 105 of NAHASDA. The secretary can grant the waiver if the secretary determines that a failure on the part of a recipient to comply with parts or provisions of that section. So under what circumstances are waivers of the environmental review procedures available to the tribes? A, will not frustrate the goals of the National Environmental Policy Act of '69 or any other provision of law that furthers the goals of that act, does not threaten the health, safety, or community involved by posing an immediate or long-term hazard to residents of that community. C, is a result of inadvertent error, including an incorrect or incomplete certification provided under 105C. And may be corrected through the sole action of the recipient. Are the cost of an environmental review an eligible cost? Yes, all day long. Okay, guys? You need to spend the money if you don't have someone to do that on your behalf. Okay? Otherwise, you can't spend any money. So it's definitely an eligible cost. The cost of completing your environmental reviews are eligible. So this is the new PIH notice 2024. 2024. HUD developed this programmatic environmental review for all of your soft cost and this is in the reference materials. Okay, it is supposed to help with your burden and explain some of those soft costs. So the other part is you need to know if you're dealing with a contractor versus a subrecipient. You need to, first of all, determine that. So, you know, what type of a relationship it is so you can follow the proper rules. So what is not procurement? A subgrant is not procurement. A joint venture agreement that you actually control is not procurement. Investments are not procurement. You need to make a case-by-case determination whether each agreement you cast, if that agreement is going to be with you and a subrecipient or you and a contractor, okay? So your characteristics under 330A of a subrecipient, you determine who is eligible. Is their performance, is it related to the objectives of your federal program? Responsible for programmatic decision making? Responsible for compliance with your federal program requirements? They use funds for a public purpose per the program rather than providing goods or services. Those are usually the role of a subrecipient, okay? Now, a subaward is for the purposes of carrying out a portion of your federal award. So your subaward definition means an award provided by a pass-through entity to a subrecipient for the subrecipient to carry out part of your federal award received by that pass-through entity. It does not include payments to a contractor or payments to an individual that is a beneficiary of a federal program. A subaward can be provided through any form of legal agreement, including an agreement that that pass-through entity might consider, they would consider that a contract. So your compliance responsibilities, your TDHE, regardless, are responsible for everything. Okay, if you have a subrecipient, they're responsible for the certain things that you laid out within your contract or however you've done it. But you're responsible to make sure that they have done that. Okay, just like your tribe is responsible to make sure your housing entity does things. So your tribe could have a board of commissioners under it. The board of commissioners could be responsible for the TDHE, but ultimately the tribe is responsible for your board of commissioners. So it goes downhill, but this has got the ultimate responsibility at the very top. Okay. So when you're making contractor determinations, the purpose of that contract is for the purposes of obtaining goods and services. It creates a procurement relationship with the contractor. Now, a contractor relationship is different. They provide goods and services within normal operations. They provide goods and services to many different purchasers. They normally operate within a competitive environment. They provide goods and services that are ancillary to the operation of a federal program, and they're not subject to any of the compliance requirements of that federal program. They're a contractor. You're responsible for all of that. Okay. The compliance responsibilities with the contractor, they're not like they are, with the other one. You are responsible for everything. So 200-331, you use your judgment in making those determinations. You need to use judgment in classifying each agreement as a subaward or a procurement contract. The substance of the agreement is more important than the form of the agreement, but all the characteristics of a subrecipient or a contract might not be present. So when I do this class in person, I usually have probably 5 or 6 activities where they have to tell me, are they a subrecipient or are they a contractor? If you're remote, okay, I work with, some tribes that have hundreds and hundreds of miles between their housing authority properties. And you have somebody 200 miles away and they're making determinations, they're collecting rents, they're sending out statements when that payment is not made. They're a subrecipient. You have somebody 100 miles away and their job is to go janitorial services and cleaning and things like that for you. They're a contractor. Okay, so you have to make sure that you know the difference because they require different paperwork. So there's a subrecipient versus contractor classification checklist. So your uniform guidance implements the definition of a contractor or a subrecipient. Generally, the determination of the relationship with an external entity is verified through the review of the proposal, the budget, and your other related documents. When the relationship remains unclear, the form can be used to provide or hopefully clarify assistance in making an accurate determination and provide the documentation of the decision that you did make. So from the uniform guidance, a subrecipient means a non-federal entity who receives a subaward from a pass-through entity to carry out part of a federal program, but does not include an individual that is a beneficiary of such program. A subrecipient may also be a recipient of other federal awards directly from a federal awarding agency. And that's still confusing to a point. A contractor under 200.23, your contractor means an entity that receives a contract as defined at 200.22 contract. A contract means it's a legal instrument by which a non-federal entity purchases property or services needed to carry out a project or program under a federal award. So there's a checklist to help you with this task. So you complete sections 1 and 2 by marking all the characteristics that apply to your outside entity who are going to receive those federal funds. The section with the greatest number of marked characteristics indicates the likely type of relationship that that entity is going to have with that agency. On occasion, there may be exceptions to the type of that relationship indicated by the checklist. In those situations, the substance of the relationship should be given a greater consideration than the form of the agreement between the agency and that outside entity. Section 3 should be used to provide documentation on the use of judgment in determining that proper relationship classification. So, subrecipient. A subaward is for the purpose of carrying out a portion of a federal award, creates a federal assistance relationship with the subrecipient. Characteristics which support the classification of the non-federal entity as a subrecipient includes when the non-federal entity determines who is eligible to receive what federal assistance, measures performance based on meeting objectives of your federal program, is responsible for programmatic decision making. Who's going to get evicted because they haven't made a payment? Who's going to get a late fee because you have them collecting? They're responsible for ensuring federal requirements outlined in the award are followed. Uses federal funds to carry out a program of the organization as opposed to providing goods or services. Make sure I didn't. So a contractor, the description they utilize for a contractor is for the purposes of obtaining goods, services for your non-federal entity, your own use, creates a procurement relationship with the contractor. The characteristics indicative of a procurement relationship between the non-federal entity and a contractor are when your non-federal entity is receiving the federal funds. They provide the goods and services within normal business operations. Okay, they normally open from 8 to 5. That's when you go work with them. They provide similar goods or services to many different purchasers. They sell their lumber to everybody. Normally operates in a competitive environment. Provides goods and services that are ancillary to the operation of your federal program. And they're not subject to compliance requirements of your federal program as a result of an agreement. So the optional section is for use of judgment. So in determining whether an agreement between a pass-through entity and another federal entity casts the latter as a subrecipient or a contractor, the substance of the relationship is more important than the form of the agreement. All of the characteristics above may not be present in all cases, as the pass-through entity must use your own judgment in classifying each agreement as a subaward or a procurement contract. And then they want you to explain why you made the decision the way you did. Okay? But did you know that you were supposed to make, this is part of the procurement? Are they a subrecipient or are they a contractor? So, final determination. Well, I'm going to say they're a contractor. The first reviewer's name and title, their signature and the date, and then the second person you had look at all the same stuff, and hopefully they're going to, match up with you. And the answer is, it could be either. It's a matter of judgment, if it's a goods and service relationship or a performance related to your program. So you got to be careful there. The answer is subrecipient. Okay, so procurement checklist information for your procurement files. So what procurement method did you use? Is it complete? What was the date? Here's the initials of the person verifying that. Vendor selected. Was the cost reasonable? Did you have a purchase order or a contract? Is it all the way, completely filled out? Did you make sure there was Indian preference looked at? Did you check the debarred list? Please provide comment if needed regarding any variance from the standard procurement procedures, such as why a different method of procurement was used or why multiple bids could not be obtained. For small purchase, what procurement method was used? The description of item or service to purchase, number of quotes you received, the vendor selected, was the cost reasonable? Do you have a completed purchase order or contract? Was Indian preference applied? And did you check the debarred list? Please provide comment if needed regarding any variance from your standard procurement procedures, such as why a different method of procurement was used or why multiple bids could not be obtained. Sealed bid. Procurement method used, description of item, services to be purchased. Was the invitation for bids put out in public? Potential bidders requesting bid packages, pre-bid conference. Do you have that sign-in sheet? Do you have the bid opening sheet? Do you have the bids received? And are they complete and verified? Was there any amendments? Who was the vendor you selected? Who was the vendors you rejected and why? Was the cost reasonable? You got a purchase order or contract filled out completely? Did you abide by Indian preference? And did you check the debarred list? Competitive, almost the same thing. Procurement method used, description of the item, request for the proposal, the public. Request for proposal includes an evaluation factor. Proposals received as complete, and the evaluation. Any amendments, vendors selected, vendors rejected and why, cost and price reasonableness, purchase order or contract, Indian preference, and debarred. So, sole sourcing, these are all pretty much the same things, unless you see where those little apostrophes, that's where it'll make them different, okay? Sole sourcing, they don't like it. Your procurement method used, the description or item to be purchased, the reason for the sole sourcing, the vendor you selected, was the cost reasonable? You got a purchase order or contract? Did you apply Indian preference? Did you check the debarred list? Did you get HUD approval as required? Okay, and provide comment if needed regarding any variance from your standard procurement procedures. You need to explain there why you sole sourced it, such as why a different method of procurement was used or multiple bids could not be obtained. So your procurement procedures, you're going to start your procurement, determine your requirements, prepare and advance a procurement plan. You could utilize cooperative purchasing methods if available, through GSA. If there's a public exigency or an emergency, you can require to jump to a non-competitive proposal. Pre-qualification of potential bidders and proposers for Indian preference. You can prepare your specifications, your statement of works, your cost estimates or your independent cost estimates. For construction projects, prepare your project manuals with your front-end documents and drawings, and then budget the funds. I always budget the funds before I start all that. Send to your contracting officer for review and concurrence if applicable. So if it's below your small purchase limit, make your purchase using informal phone, fax, mail, email, solicitations. If it's above that limit, determine the method of procurement. Are you going to utilize sealed bids or competitive proposals? If it's competitive, prepare your evaluation criteria and your point scale. And issue that solicitation, including Indian preference applications. Hold a pre-bid or a proposal conference if needed. Make your determinations on Indian preference applications if you receive any. Your bids and your proposals are received. For sealed bids, proceed to your sealed bid procedure. For competitive, proceed to your competitive proposals procedure. If only one bid or proposal is received, determine if you're going to need to re-advertise, go all the way back to step 7, or use your non-competitive proposal procedures. Sealed bid, conduct that public bid opening, review your bid for responsiveness and responsibility, including your pre-award survey if needed, apply your Indian preference for eligible bidders, award contract, notify unsuccessful bidders, end your procurement, proceed to your post-award procedures. Your competitive proposal procedure is optional to conduct an interview with each proposer. That's up to you if you want to do that. Determine if your proposer is responsive and responsible, including any pre-award survey if needed. Conduct technical and price and cost evaluations using your criteria and point scale. Apply that Indian preference for your eligible proposers. Award your contract, notify all your unsuccessful proposals. That's important, and your procurement policy should list how long you have to do that. And you end your procurement, proceed to your post-award procedures. So for a non-competitive proposals and those procedures, your written determination that the award of that contract is infeasible by any other procurement method, and one of the following actually applies. Your item is available only from a single source. It's a public emergency. HUD authorizes it. Might require a pre-award review. Did with me. Competitions determined inadequate after solicitation of several sources. So you determine your offer, again, responsive and responsible, including your pre-award survey if needed. You analyze that technical proposal if there's any. You conduct the cost analysis, conduct any negotiations, receive and evaluate revised proposals if any, and you award the contract. Then you end the procurement, proceed to your post-award procedures. So your post-award procedure, hold your post-award conference, issue a notice to proceed if applicable, monitor your contractor, your performance, your compliance, receipt the supplies, services, construction, inspect those same supplies, services, and construction, accept them, payment for work completed and accepted, make sure you keep enough retainage, exercise any applicable options for additional quantities, or time period, contract completion, and your contract closeout. So your sample contract file arrangement, it's a 10 file method. And your first file would be your contract bid folder. You'd have an in-house list of contractors that legal notices were sent to, copy of the actual notice that you sent out or appeared in the paper or wherever you advertised it, a bill from your newspaper or for the legal notice wherever you advertised it. This is not always newspaper anymore. Copy of bid forms, bid bonds, copies of signed representation certifications, and other statements of bidders. Copy of your Indian and tribal preference documentation, non-collusive affidavits, bid tabulation sheets, letter of recommendation to award that contract, copy of your ICE for your proposed contract. Your second folder is your contract award folder. You keep the copy of the cost and price analysis in that one, documentation to support the rationale for the award of that contract, documentation that they were not suspended or debarred, copy of performance bonds or payment bonds or evidence of a cash escrow of not less than, I think it's 25%. I can't read my writing because this thing's in the way. Let's see. I think, I don't want to misquote you. You'll be able to see that actual figure there. I can't. The letter of credit for 25% of the total contract, letter of 10% of the total contract price, copy of signed contract, copy of insurance certificates, copy of pre-construction checklist. Okay. So the third file is your specifications, copy of contract specifications, any bidding addendums would go in there, and your drawings. And never give the last copy of any of that stuff away, or your blueprints. Your fourth one is your contract registers. Okay, the copy of the contract register, change order registers, and contract progress schedules. Your fifth one is your change orders. Copy of all change orders in numerical order. Can you tell it's Friday? Including copy of change order documents, copy of cost or price analysis, documentation to support the rationale for the award of that change order, finding of fact, and supporting documents. So the sixth file is your contract payments, copy of all contractor payment requests and supporting documentation. Your seventh is your contractor payrolls, copy of all contractor payroll reports. Remember, you're supposed to be Davis-Bacon and all of that stuff is listed on those. Submittals, copy of all contractor submittal logs and contractor submittals. Your ninth one is your daily logs, copies of all daily logs. 10 is your general correspondence and closeout documents. Miscellaneous correspondence to whomever was necessary during the course of this, including HUD. Copy of your final inspections, your punch list, your contract closeout documents, all your warranties, copy of your operations and your maintenance manuals. So this file could be a lot bigger than your other ones. So a general statement, that exception per 1026, sections 200, 318 through 326 apply as modified in this paragraph. We are allowed to utilize federal supply sources and procurement. In accordance with Section 101 of the NAHASDA statutes, recipients can utilize federal supply sources made available by the General Services Administration pursuant to 40 U.S.C. 501. So to utilize them, you can do what they call cooperative purchasing, intergovernmental. It's a procurement, joint purchasing. You can read about that at 2 CFR 200-318E. Through General Services Administration's eBuy. It's a federal request for quote system, government access surplus properties. You can read about those at 2 CFR 200-318F. Can be used to procure material, equipment, and some services. You address it in your procurement policy. You need to apply applicable preferences, price and cost analysis. Once the award is made, normal contracting procedures would apply. The GSA programs, you can do vehicle leasing. You can get used government property. Oftentimes you have to go get it. So like the public works, I'd be flying to Maine and I'd be in the Detroit airport and they'd be getting on the plane. A couple of our, maintenance, where you got? Oh, we're going to go pick up a tractor or a backhoe or, and they could get a good price on it, but they had to go get it, so, used government property and purchase card, travel cards, federal supply schedules, and information technology. So there is a website. You can get quotes for GSA vendors, www.ebuy.gsa.gov. Okay. Simplified acquisition process. eBuy, which is a component of GSA Advantage, is an electronic request for quote RFQ system designed to allow federal buyers to prepare RFQs directly online for a wide range of services and products offered through GSA Multiple Awards Schedules, a MAS program. eBuy allows RFQs and quotes to be exchanged electronically between federal buyers and schedule contractors. eBuy delivers the power of the internet by allowing federal buyers to interact with the commercial marketplace to obtain best value solutions for their operations. So the GSA, what can they do for you? Well, it's a federal agency. It's a buying arm of the government. They can leverage their federal purchase power. Sorry, guys. Leverage their federal purchasing power. And the tribes can utilize them as well as our TDAGs. So federal supply schedules, what are they? They're a pre-negotiated contract with pricing, warranty, environmental, delivery, and at one time, there was 16,000 in place. I think there's quite a few more now. So why use them? Savings, cost, time, competition. You can do it over the internet. Meets Indian preference. Search is available for Native-owned enterprises. What products and services are covered? Professional services, audits, environmental assessments, architects, legal. And eBuy is the online request for quotes, the RFQ tool, which allows authorized buyers to obtain quotes and issue orders for products and services offered by sellers on the GSA Multiple Award Schedules MAS program. You can utilize eBuy for services, quantity or high dollar purchases where you're seeking a discount from contract pricing, purchases with complex requirements, determining sources of supplies, receiving quotes on blanket purchase agreements. Snapshot of the page, okay? You can get a user ID and password and register there. There's an advanced search to look for things. There's a tutorial and an explanation if you want to explore that. That's kind of what it looks like. So that is it. We're ending up a little bit early for the day. I went through the questions a lot quicker than I thought I was going to. The end of the 5 days. Thank you all for sticking with us. Please don't jump out. I didn't want to make you late on a Friday especially, so I think that's why I made some portions longer and this one shorter. So make sure you get her survey done if you would. And it looks like Brooke answered the question on the reference materials. Thank you. Hey, Bessie.
Hi, and I can expand on that a little bit more. Yeah, folks, if you when you leave here, please do the feedback survey first. As I've been saying all week, it just takes a minute or two, helps us at the Native Learning Center, helps Cheryl as an instructor, and it is anonymous, so you don't have to worry about, you know, your name being on anything. It's an anonymous survey. But with regard to all the resource items that Cheryl had pulled together for you, you'll be able to find them in the courses section that I had pointed out in the beginning. I'm going to go back to my intro slides so I can show you what I mean. Here, there we go. Yeah, so when you're looking at the home screen, yours might not be expanded like this. Yours might just be the little symbols. But if you look at that red menu panel that I always tell you not to click on during the webinar, and you click on where it says courses or where you see kind of like a book, like emoji, that will take you to a full list of all the different webinars we've done since we've been on this new platform. So you just want to find the one that's titled NAHASDA Procurement and Contract Administration, and you'll actually be able to see all the different slides from all 5 days. You'll be able to see all the different webinar recordings. I post them the next morning. And then if you go through the different pages, I believe there are 3 that have all the reference materials. They're all listed and they're kind of linked. So you'll just click on the title and it'll take you to a PDF or a Word document of that resource. I want to say there's like 33 of them, maybe 35, but they're all on there. If you don't see the one you're looking for, just go to the next page because I think they're spread out across like 3 pages. But that is all for you in the courses section. So if you want to share that with anyone, go access it for yourself. That is where you will find it. Yeah, the recordings are on our YouTube. They're also in that courses section, like I just said. The link to go to our webinar archive on YouTube is in the shared notes, but I'm going to copy and paste it into the chat right now for easy access. If you guys want to check that out at some point, you'll find all the recordings from this week as well as our other webinars for about the last 2 years. I think it goes back. So we encourage you to use that as a resource, see what's available in there, share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues. And then please check out our upcoming training events. We post about them on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And then if you are a podcast fan, we produce one in-house, the Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast, and you can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts, and you can watch the videos with our awesome guests on YouTube. All right, folks, that's all we have for you today. Cheryl, you have been amazing this entire week. So much important information. It is a lot, you guys. So, make sure you go back to that courses section if you have any questions or you want to review slides or check out a recording. That's available to you at all times now that you're on the learning platform. You have full access. But I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. Cheryl, thank you again for all this important information. Looks like people are typing, so I'm going to hang back. Oh, Sarah is showing you love in the chat, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
All right, folks. That webinar feedback survey is in the chat as well. I know it looks the same, but there actually has been a different survey for each of the 5 days. So even if you did one of the other ones and you don't mind and you have a moment here, please go ahead and do the one for today too. And I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of their Friday and a fantastic weekend ahead. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.